Happy birthday to Mike DeFilippo. Coming up Memorial Day, our special, we speak to acclaimed filmmaker Ryan Coogler about his new film Sinners, and to Keith Lamar on death row in Ohio. Look for our new job listings. We're hiring a senior headline news producer, a director of audience, director of technology. Go to democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarland, host of The Conversation with Al McFarland. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarland. We're glad to be here. Glad to have you along. A special thanks to our friends and colleagues, producers, operators, volunteers at KFAI, mighty KFAI 90.3 FM in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and at kfai.org around the world. We thank KFAI for allowing us a special week. We're calling it George Floyd Week, live from George Floyd Square. And that is where we are right now. We're broadcasting this program and streaming it across several platforms from George Floyd Square in South Minneapolis. We're at the Worldwide Outreach for Christ Church at 3808 Chicago Avenue South. And everybody around here is connected, touched in some way with what happened here 5 years ago. We're calling this the observance of the anniversary of the death of George Floyd, but many in the community are calling it the observation of the angel-versary, the transition of George Floyd. That's an important distinction. It's important because we have to find ways to create our own language, our own analysis, our own descriptions, our own interpretations of events. And that interpretation has to reflect our sense of dignity, our sense of hope, our sense of history, our sense of antiquity, our sense of the future. Changing the dialogue, changing the narrative, owning the narrative, creating the narrative, being the center of the narrative is what this is all about today as we reflect on what happened and where we were and how we see where we are right now and how, at the end of the day, we must continue to move towards healing. Well, this show, like our regular show every Friday, is called The Healing Circle, and I'm pleased to have my colleague and one of my leaders in spirit and in the professional world, excuse me, Dr. BraVada Garrett-Akinsanya, who's co-hosting with me today, and she does every Friday. And we start the Friday show with a special protocol that is the Healing Circle. Before I do the Dr. B, let me also acknowledge some of the sponsors here. We've acknowledged, number one, the great people here at the Worldwide Outreach for Christ Center. And I want to take a parenthetical note here and tell people that tomorrow at 3 o'clock, 3 to 6, there's a special program. It's the Deacon Program, the 16th annual Deacon Program. And the theme is powerful. The theme ties into what we're doing right now. The theme is We're Still Fighting. So that's tomorrow, May 24th, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here at Worldwide Outreach for Christ, the 16th annual Deacon Program, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Show up, be a part of the spirit, be part of this feeling, part of the healing. With that, I want to also acknowledge that we're connecting with you not only on KFAI, but we're connecting on two YouTube platforms, that of Black Press USA and that of Insight News. We want you to go to YouTube Insight News MN and become a subscriber, like the program and share it. Tell somebody that we're live here from George Floyd Square. Invite them to be a part of this as well. We're also streaming to Facebook platforms for Black Press USA and for Insight News. We're streaming to LinkedIn. However you're connected, we value that. We appreciate that. Uniquely, this week, we're streaming live or broadcasting live as well from SPNN St. Paul Neighborhood Network in St. Paul and their companion organization, Speak Minneapolis in Minneapolis. What a wonderful array of technology, all in the service of our vision, our voice, creating solutions for our people here and around the world. Well, let me begin by bringing in Dr. B, Dr. BraVada Garrett-Akinsanya. She's the principal and parent and leader at the African American Child Wellness Institute. Dr. B, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Baba Al. And it's so wonderful to see our community in this space of healing and loving and growing, because we have a thing called post-traumatic growth. And what we want to do is, when we have these kind of experiences as a people, we need to grow from it. Our beliefs, our faith, our support of one another needs to stem from that, because we still are seeds. And so people don't see us growing because we're growing underground, but we're getting deeper roots so that we will heal. And as we sit here today, we are in circle, not just physical, but virtual circle, with everyone who's listening, everyone whose heart is in the space of this experience. And as we sit in a circle as African people, I want us just to imagine that in a circle, there's no beginning, there's no end, there's no top, there's no bottom. Everyone in the circle has equal access to the space of power, which is the center of the circle. Everyone. So our voices matter. And as we think of these things, we have to realize that in a circle, we are safe. So I invite people to take a deep breath and just feel it in your body, inhaling the spirit of wellness, exhaling anxiety, stress, frustration. Inhale your right to be, and exhale your fears around that. Inhale peace and love, and exhale frustration and even resistance that's not healthy. Inhale healthy resistance and power. Exhale fear. I ask you to look to your right, noticing you're safe. Look to your left, notice you're safe. I invite you to look behind you and notice you're safe. Feeling your feet on the floor, the grounding of our ancestors as you connect with the earth from which we all come and go. And as we sit in this space, we honor our elders, because somebody for generations and hundreds and thousands of years have hoped and dreamed us into existence. So we sit here, the embodiment of generations of dreams. So for our elders, we say thank you. We say ashe. And we honor our ancestors in the circle, because those were the elders that the shoulders that our elders stood on. And as we honor the beautiful legacy of courage and love, resistance, overcoming, healing, and growing that sits in the space of our ancestors, we honor them because they are closest to our Creator. So we honor in this circle, healing, loving, growing. And as an African people, we are orderly. So whether you're present in the room or not, we use a virtual talking stick to pass the conversation from one to another. And if the spirit so moves and you need the stick, you ask for it and it will be given. So with all of that in mind, we say thank you for this wonderful opportunity to remember the love of our brother, George Floyd, and his sacrificial life, that we may grow and learn, teach, and continue to be seeds of healing. And I give the talking stick back to Baba.
Thank you, Dr. B. Thank you so much. What a wonderful way to begin. It settles the mind, settles the heart, settles the spirit. And we want to use the settling to bring an earnestness, a connectedness to our conversation, to our meditation, and to our prayer and expectation for the future. I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland, the Healing Circle. We're broadcasting and live streaming from the Worldwide Outreach for Christ Church at 3808 Chicago Avenue. If you're in the neighborhood, drop in and say hello. Also connect with us by dropping a note into the chat. If you're online at YouTube, or if you are one of the Nubian community and are monitoring this, drop a line in the chat there as well. Well, let me begin by bringing our first guest on. And our guest is an author and is presented this week here in Minneapolis. Let me pull a note up. Just 1 second here. And the discussion is about the power. How do we measure power? Let me need one second here. So Dr. Andre Perry was in town with an event sponsored by the McKnight Foundation, talking about the question of power. Dr. Andre Perry, good afternoon. Welcome to The Conversation. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I wish I could have stayed over a few more days and I could have been there live with you, but it's still a pleasure to be with you on this important occasion.
Well, the technology is wonderful, and we're glad you're able to join us. Let's have you jump right into it. Let's show your book, first of all. Jared, put the book cover up, and we can introduce that and talk about what you shared in an important event here a couple of days ago. Jared, can you put that book cover up for Dr. Perry's book? There we go. The Black Power Scorecard, measuring the racial gap and what we can do about it. So, Dr. Perry, talk about it. You got it.
Yeah. Earlier this week, while in Minneapolis at the Capri Theater, I talked about forming an agenda 5 years after the killing of George Floyd. Certainly, we all know what transpired 5 years ago. And the focus at the time, most of the focus was on a biased criminal justice system, discriminatory policing. What I presented in Minneapolis is that we also need a robust agenda that covers all the aspects of or components of our thriving. What are the most important factors of thriving? So, and I wanted to do that because when you limit an agenda to what harms us, you have a limited set of tools to form. So I wanted to dive deep into these other factors that are very important. And I'll just give you the shorthand. We use the machine learning algorithm to go through thousands of variables to get at the most important factors on life expectancy. And we see that home ownership, incomes, education, family, safety, air quality or pollution, all these things are important. So to honor George Floyd, we must deal with the overarching policy context in which people live and thrive. And so what I pose is let's also not just work on policing systems during this time. Let's remember that George Floyd lived in community in which income, housing, and other factors were important. And so let's form an agenda around all of these things.
And so what's the reception to the idea? How important is it to sort of train ourselves, retrain ourselves, to reorient ourselves to be solution and building minded, and to move out of the binding nature of trauma?
Yeah, it's important to rally around trauma, because when something happens as horrific as George Floyd, we certainly must respond. However, eventually, people will have to send their kids to school. People have to go to work. That civil unrest must become civic action. And the way we rally around civic action is by having a positive vision of us existing in the future. We talk about Afrofuturism in a science fiction context, but seeing ourselves in the future requires us to see ourselves as thriving. And so I hope to enter the conversation by offering concrete solutions to improve some of the things that will enable Minnesotans to thrive, and particularly those in the Twin Cities. And there's a few things, and I'll just mention one right off the top. Certainly, incomes there are relatively higher than other places in the country. However, home ownership is significantly low. And we know that home ownership predicts for a lot of different things, including education, health. When you have a more stable residential environment, you're probably going to have better income, more reliable transportation. So many things come from the stability of home ownership. And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying affordable housing, I'm saying home ownership. And so there are practical solutions to this. We certainly see the importance of special purpose credit programs, how they can be leveraged. These are programs that banks can change underwriting standards so that you can provide a loan to someone who's doing everything right, doing all the things that are necessary. They just don't have the down payment. And so we can create a loan product for them. We can certainly create new forms of ownership and community land trusts and other things. But the point is, when we enrich the community, that we see better outcomes for Black people in all places in the country. And so, but we must see ourselves beyond the trauma. That it's not focusing on what harms us, but also focusing on what will elevate our lives. I mean, and I mean this in years of life. I define power by being able to live out your natural life. And there are components that we must address in order to thrive.
So when it comes to organizing the ability, the capability of building a community, what resources are involved, and how do we attract, assemble, amass resources that give us the power to do and to become who we will become? And what's behind this question is, how much do we look internally within ourselves to tax ourselves, to invest of our own treasure in the building of new community? And how much of a command or of a demand can we lay on the structure around us? On the one hand, we've all been paying taxes. We contribute to the economies that we live in. But I would say, and many of us feel, we don't get a fair return on our investment. In fact, we pay for others to do damage to us.
Yeah.
And they teach us that the damage we experience is our fault, not theirs. It's their structure. And our work as community has been to challenge that, to dismantle it, to, in a sense, put ourselves at those seats of power, the tables of power, and to leverage those resources. But how do you see us operating both internally and externally to amass the resources and the will to create solutions that are different, ones that honor our history, our dignity, and our future? What do you think?
Yeah, when I was there this past week, I met with the Groundbreak Coalition. It's a coalition of financial institutions, nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, working to build up home ownership, commercial real estate ownership, and business growth. And I think the resources are clearly there, both internally and externally. in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So there are a number of financial institutions, a number of philanthropic organizations, private citizens that can contribute to the factors that matter most. I will say this, that I generally fall on the side of what you were saying, that we are taxpaying citizens, residents. We deserve the investment from government, from our private enterprises. We are contributing like all Americans, and we are not getting the returns that we deserve. And let's keep in mind that many of the assets that we do have are devalued. Most people know me through my work on housing devaluation, where we found that homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Cumulatively, there's about $156 billion in lost equity. And I always put that into context. That $156 billion nationally would have financed more than 4 million Black-owned businesses, based upon the average amount Black people use to start their firm. Would have paid for more than 8 million four-year degrees. It would have covered nearly all of Hurricane Katrina damage, replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over. So I say that to say that, yes, we have a responsibility to contribute, but understand that we also face a Black tax that limits our ability to contribute. Still, we must. This is why I always support cooperatives and collective ways to contribute. In terms of commercial real estate, 80% of all commercial real estate is owned by 1% of individuals. We can use the Security Exchange Commission's approved crowdfunding platforms that enable residents with as little as $1,000 invest in a commercial real estate endeavor, creating a new class of owners. Why I say that's important, we have examples of this going on all across the country. I spotlight the work of Lanier Richardson in my book, Black Power Scorecard. But it can be done in the Twin Cities, where as you develop commercial corridors, that the local residents can own the property themselves. And so this is the kind of ways I think we should invest in ourselves, by being owners of the property that surround us. This is going back to 40 acres and a mule. Its point was to be able to own the land and control the means of production on that land. We can do this, and we deserve it, because, again, going back to your point, we are tax-paying citizens, residents, and we deserve these kinds of opportunities.
Dr. Perry, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your book. We appreciate you, and keep up the work. You're always welcome here at the Conversation with Al McFarland. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks.
I'm Al McFarland. We're broadcasting live from the Worldwide Outreach Church for Christ here at 3808 Chicago Avenue South. We're in the heart of George Floyd Square. This is George Floyd Week. We're presenting this week's programming. Today's the last day of it, as live from George Floyd Square. Let me ask one of my guests in studio here, Marquita Stephens. She's the president and CEO of the Urban League of Twin Cities. The Urban League, as a national movement, has been a stalwart, has been a pioneering and a fighting organization focusing on jobs and wealth building and building economies and on civil rights hand in hand. Marquita, welcome. And as you reflect on the comments Dr. Perry made, how has the Urban League as an organization, both locally and nationally, been attentive to addressing the development and the protection of our people?
Thank you very much for
lean into the microphone for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me today. I attended the presentation with Dr. Perry, so I did have a firsthand look at some of the findings that he summarized in his comments. I also attended a presentation by Minnesota Compass, which showed a slight increase in home ownership among Blacks in Minnesota recently. But we, as one of the organizations that's involved in increasing housing ownership amongst African Americans in the Twin Cities, have had a cutback in the funding for the feds through the state. And so therefore it will cripple our ability, and I'm sure we're not the only ones, to work with people who may want to own homes but aren't familiar with the process or need help with credit recovery, et cetera. So I would expect, based on the funding shifts that have occurred, that the rate of progress in housing in particular, because that's what we're talking about, will lessen. That rate will be impacted negatively. But the Urban League stands strong and will advocate for those persons who are seeking to increase their wealth through home ownership, as well as providing some of the other services that we do to support the growth and stability of Black families.
What happened? I asked my guest this, where were you when you got the information about the death of George Floyd here on 38th in Chicago? How did that affect you personally? Tell me what happened. Where were you? What were you doing?
I don't remember the exact thing that I was doing, but I can tell you that my reaction was to understand that in order for that not to happen again, in order for change to occur, that we needed to change state law. That policing is governed by state law, and it caused me and a few other women that I know to run for office. That was our response to the murder of George Floyd, that in order to change this, it needed to happen at the state level. And so I ran in I lived in a suburban community at the time. I ran in that community as the first Black that had ever run in that community for Senate. I did not win. Obviously, I'm here.
This time. Yeah.
But, I was running against the Senate Majority Leader. So, but I did do very well and won in her district. So it signaled us that there was an opportunity for change. And so we were able to then work in other ways to support a movement to change policing at the legislative level, which is where it needs to change in order for the practical experience of everyday people in community to change.
Lori Wilson is the CEO and president of Turning Point. Turning Point is a North Minneapolis-based, but national, regional, and local healing center addressing chemical dependency for Black people. What's unique about it? It led the discussion locally and nationally about culturally specific solutions. Mm-hmm. Before, the industry of healing had been one where huge mega organizations, you can call them mega churches if you want to, but mm-hmm. mega recovery organizations and prevention and other types of organizations, in a sense, like a big business, move people in and out around a model that worked, I think, in some places and was useful, but it didn't particularly address the particular issues, nuances, concerns, cultural identity of our people. Turning Point emerged as the model, as the champion of saying that we have to address our own people and that our people have to be in charge. One of the things that is an Al McFarlandism now is the statement that too often we get the misery, they get the money. Mm-hmm. What do you mean, Al McFarland? White people make a business out of treating, caring for, managing Black people, and the managing is the managing of our misery, not the managing of our healing. The object of healing should be completion, fulfillment, wholeness, health, wellness, robustness. That has not been the product that our society has delivered to Black people in any of its institutions. Turning Point stood against that. Lori, welcome to the program. Talk about Turning Point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McFarland. And thank you for this panel. This is an awesome panel, so I am honored to be on it. Turning Point has been in existence for almost 50 years. Next year will be our 50-year anniversary. And that's an applause, right? And so Dr. Peter Hayden created that space for us, because he went through treatment 50 years ago, right? And so What he really wanted was a place for us to go, feel comfortable in, and feel like home. We've had so many individuals that have come through. We calculated about 25,000 people within that time frame. And amazingly so, George Floyd went through that program as well. And so it's been an honor to be in that space. I was not in that space for a while. I was in corporate for a while, but then came back to the community because I know there was a need for my presence and to help my community. So we are a treatment center that has capacity to do inpatient programming and outpatient programming. We also have sober housing on Glenwood Avenue as well. So it's been a challenge in these times. I was just talking to Marquita about funding, and sadly, we don't get the funding that we need. And so we're on the struggle bus, as she eloquently said, but we're trying to get, make sure that we're making a difference in the community.
Dr. B, let me pass the talking stick back to you and reflect on this whole question of healing. What is the mandate? What is it that we need to do? What is it that we can do? What is it that we must do to move towards and through and to attain the healing that we seek as human beings, but as African people as well? What are your thoughts?
The first thing that hits me is my head fills with African proverbs, especially with those two women. I'm telling you, Lori, Marquita, when they start talking, proverbs are hitting me. And one of them is, a person doesn't go hunting when your house is on fire. So we know as an African people, our houses have been on fire. And we may need to hunt to get certain things, but the only way that fire is going to get put out is by doing it together. You with your little cup of water is not going to put the fire out. We have to work collaboratively, cooperatively, look in those rooms. If we don't see our sisters or brothers we know should be in there, we need to go fetch them. And I don't believe in waiting to be invited anymore. I don't even, and sometimes we go in Black spaces and we're not welcome because we bring Shanae, Pookie, whoever name we need to bring so that everybody can benefit from the growth, the healing. So healing first is a community-based function. And I work with children and I see people who don't understand the cultural aspect, having the parents in the waiting room and the kids upstairs with their white therapists learning how to be assertive and talk about different things, but they don't heal the relationship between those parents and their children. So I teach that children come in a package. It's called a family. And if you're up in my mama Leveda's house, you're not running anything. So if you don't bring her in the process, you're not going to be able to help BraVada or any other kids she has. That's the first thing. The second thing about healing is that it is purposeful. You're not going to fool around and fall into healing by accident. You have to have an intention that I got to change some stuff. I don't maybe know how, I don't know when, where, or who, but I know this isn't working for me. That's what we have to do as a Black community. And the last little piece I put is that we can't be stubborn and stuck. There's one more African proverb that says, by the time the fool has learned the game, the players have dispersed. So we don't want to be slow at learning how to survive and thrive in an infrastructure that wasn't built by us, for us, or designed by us. We have to learn how to crack that.
So how do we build? I mean, so to me, I hear you saying we have to get to where we believe that we can build our own.
Yeah.
And that what we build will ultimately not only serve us, but this is the model for serving humanity.
There you go.
We have to see ourselves as the center of human existence itself. And that gives us a certain gravitas, a certain power, an ability to fashion and create solutions that are generic and universal, that are cosmic in nature. How do we do that? How do we change our minds to where we begin to enact and act in that way? What do you think?
We can't continue to hold on to things that were taught to us that don't function for us. So when Black parents, when I, for example,
like what? Yeah,
I'm
explain.
gonna give you a good example.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in the South. My mama would get me to go outside to get the switch. You got to go switch shopping. Which one is she going to get you with? And in that era, what we didn't understand is why we whip our kids. We want them to be safe. We want them not to be killed by a white person or a police officer or even in a gang. We want our children to live. So we think that as Black parents, if I whoop them and I quote the Bible, spare the rod and spoil the rod, and spare the rod and spoil the child, then I'm doing what the Lord want me to do. I'm doing all this. And what we don't know is that we were taught that from colonizations and masses.
Mm.
That's not ours. We didn't come up with that. Because you know what? When we are in a village, before a child asks for food and they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20 parents, all of us owning that child, before they can act a fool and get hurt, one of us got permission to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
So a village approach, when we give each other permission and see all children as our children, every child is our child, we should act like it. So that's the first piece I'm talking about. How do we do that? We just tell ourselves that's not going to work anymore. And there are a lot of psychological things we do that keep us in health and keep us in a space of being stuck. And those things are things that pull us back. But I remember one that my grandma taught me, second grade education, daughter of 2 generations from being a slave. And one of the things she taught me is that if somebody's telling you something that ain't true about you, just see it as the devil and say, I rebuke you. I went to college, got a PhD, and they call that thought stopping. You hear me? Thought stopping. You get paid for saying thought stopping. I'm just remembering my grandma Alice saying, I rebuke it.
That's right.
So we need to use our history. We need to use our elders. We need to use each other as resources who are giving and holding information and knowledge. And when we finally say, I have a right to wellness. My children have a right to wellness. My community has a right to wellness. If suffering and hurt and harm has paid that price, it's been done. We have a right to be well, and we have to achieve it by any means necessary.
Wayne, what you think?
Time waits for no one. We must stand for what's right. All the children of the world, we should not shed no blood tonight. Can't you see what the government do? How they make their case? You may say peace to me. I may say assalamu alaikum too. The world is now. What are we waiting for?
I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland. We're broadcasting live from George Floyd Square. We're calling this George Floyd Week. Many celebrations of George Floyd and his life going on around the city, around the community, around the country, around the world, commemorating the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd. And some are calling this observation the angelversary, the 5th angelversary of the transition of George Floyd into becoming an ancestor. Thanks to my brother Wayne McFarland and Ryan Listman for being and providing a musical context for these conversations. By the way, I tell people that Wayne once said, Al, give me anything, any thought, any idea, any word, and I can put music to it. So I challenge him every time to show up as the Spirit, in the Spirit, and to make this context flow. And you'll hear more of that today. I want to continue with a special colleague, now guest, a person that I am introducing to community and to the world in the pages of Inside News, but who is introducing me and us to the voice, the will, the energy of the next generation. and that is our columnist here at Insight News, Haley Taylor Schlitz. Okay, let me get it right. And listen, Haley is, I think, 22, 23. She's an assistant attorney general working for Keith Ellison over at the state AG's office. She's also the youngest Black woman, youngest woman, I believe, to graduate from law school in this country. She was in law school at the age of 16, I believe.
No.
Unbelievable. And she's here right now, and she belongs to us and belongs to you. I always tell her when I speak to her, always say hi to your mom and dad and tell them how much we appreciate them for bringing you into the world. Haley, as always, I call on you, and you do this in your column in Insight News, but when we talk, to represent the vision, the voice of the next generation. What's on your mind? What are your thoughts?
You know, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate being surrounded by such wise minds. You know, the primary thought that I think is on Gen Z's mind, you know, we're inheriting the state of this country, you know, and a lot of that comes with contradictions. A lot of that comes with discrimination and hate, and a lot of that comes with faith and hope as well. And so as I hear you guys talking, you know, the thoughts that are on my mind is how important it is to define Black success and not mimic white success, making sure that we take what's ours and make ourselves the center, like you were saying. And that's kind of the theme I hear amongst everyone who has spoken so far. And I think part of that, I want to build off of what Dr. B was just saying, is healing. You know, like you said, Al, I am a columnist for Insight News, and I just wrote a column actually. So I want to read a little snippet of it, if you'll allow. Mm-hmm. And it's about George Floyd and grief. And this is from a perspective of Gen Z. And so just a brief moment, and you could go on Insight News to read the rest of it. I'm just going to read the little tail end of it here. That pressure never really goes away. It lives in our lives daily. It follows us into schools, hospitals, courtrooms, neighborhoods. It weighs on every conversation we have with our families about safety. It sits on our backs when we try to dream, when we dare to rest. But I write this not only to grieve, but to break the cycle. Because if we do nothing else with our pain, let it be this. Let it end with us. Let this be the final inheritance. Let future generations inherit joy uninterrupted. Let them meet their grandparents. Let them breathe freely, not with fear, but with faith. We cannot bring them back, but we can tell the truth. We can demand a world where this pain is no longer passed down like a family tradition. We can insist on justice, not just in the courts, but in everyday architecture of our lives. So, and I resonate personally, and I've talked to you a couple of days about this. Thank you. I talked to you about this for the last couple of days about how George Floyd's murder was just weeks after the anniversary of my grandfather's murder. He was the second person killed in the Rodney King civil unrest. He never was able to attend any of my mother's graduations because he was murdered when my mother turned 18. So, you know, this was a very sensitive time for us. And for me, I've found that I lean very much into the arts when trying to heal. You know, I played the piano for 10 years. I'm a spoken word poet and a poet that particularly stands out to me. And I think this builds on intergenerational connectedness because there's a certain type of wisdom that you get from living life. And it really has resonated in that kind of experience passed down to Gen Z and the generations after us will really be the defining factor in not repeating history, but making progress. Maya Angelou's poem, When Great Trees Fall, is one that I read at my grandmother's funeral. And it's where I'll end, I promise. But I have this brief snippet of her poem, which I absolutely adore.
And I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you if you freestyle. Do you freestyle?
I sometimes do.
Well,
I sometimes do.
Wayne is here. We got some music, so we're going to do something
There
today.
we go. We need to freestyle. I'll have you take a word from this. But this is the snippet that I think is most applicable to our conversation. When great souls die, our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We're not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms. Slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. I think that's what's on the mind of Gen Z, that the people before us existed and we have stories to learn, experience to gain, insight to get to push us forward, because of course we can't do this alone. But more than not doing it alone is we're standing on the shoulders of greatness and progress. And I think that is what Gen Z is feeling on the anniversary, but also as we come of age.
Dr. B, jump in.
Oh, I'm just so proud of her. I'm so full. I feel like I'm having church up in here. And I don't know your parents, but I'm one of them. That's all. I said her last name is now going to be Akinsanya. Because what I feel hearing you that resonates so deeply is all the energy and love we hope to pour into you that is being realized. And I'm seeing it before my very eyes, that I have hope. You are my hope. And you stand in that space of power and hope. And girl, you bad as you want to be. And that even makes me happier. So I'm just thinking that when we see young people like her, who are just geniuses in their own right, they're not just limited like, some people who do Tesla. They're not limited with their genius. You are broad with it and deep with it and so young to hold so much. I'm so grateful that I lived to see you today. That's what I feel.
Marquita, thoughts? What are your impressions?
What I heard was respect.
Yes.
And I don't hear that very often from Gen Z. You led with respect, and I thank you. So I was moved because of that. And to know that what we've done has not gone in vain.
That's right.
And that's an important thing to communicate to my generation.
Yes.
We will go to the ends of the earth to make sure you make it. But what we want is to know that you see us in the same way we see you.
We do.
And so we love you from all of us. Much love.
Lori, jump in. Let's bring this on.
Ooh, this is emotional up here. I'm with you, Dr. B. I feel like I'm in church as well. It's amazing to hear our youth talk about the backs or the who they're standing on, and I think about my parents and their parents and how my children are doing the same thing, and it's really amazing to know that they're listening, they're hearing, and they're understanding how important they are and how important you are, my dear, because you are important. And so it really brings warmth to my heart as well. It's really amazing what you've done and where you've come from, and to have the anniversary so close to your grandfather's anniversary is pretty amazing. And it's amazing that you are bringing that out here.
Let me just jump in. There's one more Yoruba proverb. It says, when we lose an elder, a library burns.
Right.
But I see those chapters in those books in you and in all of us. So the library might burn, but the books, they are being read. And they're continuing to read and be read and grow and add more and more chapters. So I think that not only are you standing on the elders' shoulders and the ancestors' shoulders and the creator's shoulders, you're standing as a gift.
That's right. Reverend Dr. Dwayne Davis is here. He's lead minister at Plymouth Congregational Church of Minneapolis. He's also an adjunct professor of preaching and church leadership at United Seminary. Doctor, welcome to the conversation. Thank you for being here. What's on your mind and what's on your heart as you listen to this conversation, but also as you reflect on the meaning, the lessons that come from us looking at, holding the memory of the murder of George Floyd and the reconciliation, the healing that must come. What do you think?
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. When I was listening to the conversation, well, before that conversation started, I've been in this place in the last few days of wondering why it is, especially when Black people are trying to show the world, tell the world, witness to the world of what it means to suffer here, that the majority, and here in Minneapolis, I've been saying it gets so comfortable remaining in the learning zone, never move to praxis.
Teach now.
Part of being a professor, teaching preaching, teaching church leadership, we don't ever rest in the comfort of just learning, that is, reading or studying it. The next step is praxis. And what has been very frustrated in the 5 years is this idea that there is more comfort in knowing all the right books to read, all of the right things to attend, to even give a twirl in 38th and Chicago every other year, and yet never apply anything you've heard or seen. And then we are left to wonder. And then people look at us when we say, you haven't moved. There's been no progress. And then we are made to feel like we're being gaslit because we said we thought we were going to be here and we haven't gotten there. And then we tried out all of the learning we did. We tried out all the places we went, but we never get to practice. So when I was listening to this conversation, and especially my young sister, I said, this is praxis. We keep living in that place and we're asking people to come along with us because that's how we're going to really make the progress you've been touting, but we haven't really seen.
Wayne, Ryan, enough is enough. I think that's the message for the moment. Check this out.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up and down, lock you underground, take the crown away from you?
Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take their dignity? Did you were born to lose?
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
You know what happened
of all the rules you're breaking,
all the rules that you're breaking,
of all the money you're making,
all the money that you're making.
No more life gets taken.
No more lives get taken.
This is a proclamation.
Well,
400 years, we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, and the people won't wait. Action! No more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. You better believe it. It's gonna get rough.
It's gonna get rougher.
We all agree.
We've
had enough.
Well, with all the love we are.
All the rules you're breaking.
All the rules keep on breaking.
Of all the money you're
all
making.
the money you've been making.
No more life gets taken.
Life shall be taken.
This is a proclamation. Free or guilty.
It's gonna get.
You better believe.
You better believe it.
They said it's gonna get rough.
It's
gonna be tough. We all agree.
We all believe.
Of all the rules you're breaking, of all the money you're making,
All the money you're making.
no more life gets taken. It's a proclamation.
Proclamation.
Trayvon Martin, Tommy Rice,
We had enough.
Michael Brown, and they're gonna pay the price. Yeah,
We had enough.
Philando,
Rihanna, George Floyd. We had enough.
so many gone. How can we fill the void?
How can we feel the void?
John Crawford,
Well,
I know you've heard.
somebody.
Sandra Bland, come on, let's take a stand.
We've had enough. We've had enough.
Sean Bell,
Sean Bell, Sean Bell, Sean Bell. We've had enough.
Freddie Gray, did you hear what I say?
We've had enough.
There it is. There it is. Wayne McFarland and Ryan. That song is available on all the social media and music platforms. Enough is Enough by Ryan.
We'll be at Hook and Ladder tomorrow. So
There we go. Hook and Ladder tomorrow. Come check them out. The video is amazing. You'll love it when you check it out. I'm Al McFarland. We're coming to the close of our program today, The Healing Circle, the conversation with Al McFarland, live from the Worldwide Outreach for Christ at 3808 Chicago Avenue South in Minneapolis. We're at the heart of George Floyd Square. And we want to move towards closing with the review reflection. Dr. B, I'm going to come to you again. What and how? What do we do and how do we center ourselves for the journey ahead? How do we prepare ourselves for the fight? Deacon Charlie Irons is saying tomorrow when he has his Deacons program here, the 16th annual Deacon program at Worldwide Outreach for Christ, the theme is We're Still Fighting. How do we fight?
I think I have a few pointers. One is to remember the we. Remember the we. It's not a battle for you alone. And we always know that the race is not given to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but to those who endure. So we have to endure, and we have to do it together. The second thought is even warriors must rest. Even warriors must rest. And then the third way is to remember to put on the armor of our Creator to fight that battle. And that battle is not just for us, but it's to save our children's lives. And I guess the last thing I believe, don't forget to laugh. Because one of the things that have brought us here is we got that saying, I have to laugh to keep from crying.
That's right.
But we also hear things like, well, it won't kill you, it will make you stronger. But in the end, we know that I am because we are. So fight together. Rest as warriors. Be smart. And claim your right to wellness that nobody can take because it was given to you by the Creator. That's what I'd say.
Awesome. Poems? Anything? Freestyle? What's on your mind?
You got it.
You know, what's on my mind is a proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. You know, I'm just leaning into the work and the potential of the village and those who come before us. I'm just feeling the energy, you know, and the stories and the lessons is what fuels the fire that the younger generations have to carry the torch on further. That's what's on my mind.
Okay, well, look, we're back down to the last couple of minutes, 10 seconds each. Reverend, first of all, final thought, word?
Your means to justice may be criticized, but never forget that your aspiration for justice is always good and right.
Lori?
I love the we. We are the we. We cannot do this without one another. And if we come together as a community, as a group, we can do this.
Marquita?
As we move forward in life, to allow space for not only what we think, but how we feel.
With that, I want to thank all of you. Let me take a minute just to give credit to the people that made this week and this program possible. I'm going to list our sponsors and supporters, first of all. They include the McKnight Foundation, the Minnesota Council, the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage, thanks to sponsor Kowalski's Markets, also Minnesota Humanities Center. Thanks to Black Press USA, to Nubia, to Nexus, and to KFAI. Thanks to Greater MSP. Thanks to our media partners, including Nubia and Speak Minneapolis and SNN, St. Paul Neighborhood Network, and thanks to our host organization here, the Worldwide Outreach for Christ here at 3808 Chicago Avenue. I want to give credit to and shout out some of the individuals who've done so much to make this wonderful program happen. Steve Brunsberg and Bianca Rhodes lead the team over at St. Paul Neighborhood Network. They've done marvelous work. We are grateful for what they do in leadership and providing a platform for our voices, our visions. Their colleague, their counterpart in Minneapolis, Rebecca Smith. She's with Speak Minneapolis. We thank her for helping produce this. Our colleague who manages the StreamYard network is Jared McMullen. Also, our McFarland Media Inside News COO, Trina V. Subs. Thanks, Trina. We were supported by Carl Varnado. He's one of the masterminds behind the creation of the Nubia Narrative Initiative. If you don't know it, go to narrative.com. Narrative with a K, just like knowledge is with a K, narrative with a K. African people, this is your home. This is your pathway to building a future. It's like building the next pyramid that'll last the next 5,000 years. Think that way. It's time to think that way. Special thanks at last year, I've got about 30 seconds, to Benji Salinas, who's on the camera, to James Harris, to Saniah Bates, to Razik Saifullah, and thanks to Bernie Purek, who's doing the audio. Once again, thanks so much to Deacon Charlie Irons, and thanks to the Reverend Apostle Curtis Farrar, the senior pastor here at the Worldwide Outreach for Christ Church, 3808 Chicago Avenue. I'm Alan McFarland. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.